Hi everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. We've gone ahead and crunched the numbers and came up with the best lists and scenarios we could for our little 1941 9N here, and it looks like we're going to be able to fix it. First thing we have to do is rob some parts from this poor old thing. But this poor thing is in rough shape. It's been sitting for years with no cylinder head on it. The engine's pretty bad, but it's excellent for parts. We're going to be grabbing this manifold and this drag link. What we're also going to do, remember I showed you that one, it's got the cast iron dash and it's got the big crack in it. This is a 2N and the dash is a little different, but it's in good shape. The steering box is tight in it, and the quadrant is in good shape. So we're just going to move this whole steering box over to that one. It's the easiest way. Well, you can see here, this poor old engine has seen better days. One thing on the plus side, they have sleeves in them, so we could knock the sleeves out and put a new set of sleeves in and she'd be good to go again. Wow, look at the stuff in the ports. She's been sitting like this for a very, very, very long time. We're making slow but sure progress parting out our 2N. I've got the front axle and all the steering parts and drag links and everything off of it. Now we're going to start stripping the engine down. Well, here's a look inside it. I would say that at points this engine was probably completely filled with water. Moving right along, I pulled the steering box and transmission cover off, and happy to report that the inside of the transmission is nice and clean still. The oil even looks pretty good. And that's good, because when we start working on this one that we bought from the original family, I do know that the transmission in this one has been full of water, and it is just a completely seized blob of rust inside. So we'll use the guts from that transmission inside this one when we get to it. We're going to have a go at getting the valve gear out of this thing. I already got this one out and it was ugly. It came out in little pieces. Everything is totally seized. There's a way that these things have to come out. I'm going to try and get one out in one piece and show you how it works, but I'm not holding my breath. I did manage to get two of them out in one piece, both exhaust valves. So this one, it came from here. It was the number 2 exhaust valve. So you can see how our two-piece guide, it fits over the valve, and the retainer goes against the mushroom there. And when you put it in, you push the valve guide down and put the clip on, and then the valve spring is actually what holds it all together. It pushes up on the clip against it. There's a little counter bore in the underside of the block there that this fits in and holds it all together. Well, here we go. We're going to see if we can get the engine off of this thing. I'm not sure if I can take all the bolts out, but the clutch and the input shaft of the transmission and everything could also be all seized. I'm not sure. We'll find out. This is the last bolt, and I do see the parting line is starting to part, so hopefully it'll come off. Let's see. Yeah, that's looking promising, isn't it? There we go. Look at that. It came off. I don't believe it. Now we can put it down on the floor and start. Well, I think before I put it on the floor, I'll take the clutch and the flywheel off. Well, that sure is ugly, isn't it? We'll go ahead and start working our way down to get the crankshaft out of this thing. First thing I got to do is take the front main cap off so I can get at the one rod nut. And I think the way the rods are, I can get it out in one piece, and then we'll see about getting the pistons and the sleeves out once we got the crank out. Well, that's pretty odd. The crankshaft looks pretty nice. And you can see here, it's got a brand new set of main bearings in it. Why it ended up sitting outside with no cylinder head on it is a mystery. We'll have to keep digging to figure that out. I managed to get the crankshaft out. Now we have to turn our attention to the pistons. We got to try and get the pistons out of this thing. And that's probably not going to be much fun. They're probably going to come out in little pieces. The one good thing is I hope possibly by knocking out the pistons, I will knock the sleeves out with them. I don't think we'll be able to save these rods either. They're probably going to get beat up in the process. But, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I'm going to get these two middle ones out first. And if the pistons are that seized in the sleeves, maybe the sleeves will come out with them and we'll kind of get 2 for 1. Well, I just punched a hole in the top of the piston. There we go, the sleeve is coming out. Which is just fine. We got to change them anyway. I'm probably going to have to build up more wood. I don't think I'm going to have enough room to get the sleeve out. Oh, now the damn piston comes out. Well, most of the piston. Now I got to get my little tool so I can knock the rest of the sleeve out. Alright, so I've got my sleeve puck in there. It's the right tool for this. And we'll just use it and knock it the rest of the way out. That's a long way down. Might have to get, there we go. I was going to say I might have to get something longer. Okay, there's our old sleeve. It came out in a hell of a mess, didn't it? Alright, well, it can go in the scrapola pile. And we'll do that 3 more times till we've got all 4 of them out. I'll see you then. We got all 4 pistons and sleeves out, and everything looks pretty good down in there. Now what we have to do is we have to get the cam followers and the camshaft out. An interesting side note on these, you'll see here, when these engines were in tractors, it was a gravity-fed fuel system. But a lot of these engines were used in industrial applications too, running generators and pumps and stuff like that. So there is a provision for a mechanical fuel pump. On those engines, that would be opened up and the holes to mount it, drilled and tapped. And you can see here, there's the eccentric there to drive it. So I managed to get the camshaft freed up, and I got it to turn around a couple of times anyway and get all the followers pushed out as far as I could. So now hopefully we can get this camshaft out. That was a bit of a struggle, but we kept turning the camshaft and turning it and working in around the lobes to get the followers pushed out. There you can see they were stuck in there pretty good, and we got it out. So there we are. We're down to our bare cylinder block, and that's ready to use on another project. I've got another 9N out the back that I want to fix up, but the engine block has a big crack in the side of it from freezing, so we'll be able to use this engine block in its place and make a good engine. I checked all this stuff out, and it's a real shame that this engine ended up derelict with no cylinder head on it. I mean, somebody spent a lot of money on it. I measured the bores. They're 30 over. It's got oversized pistons in it, although unfortunately they're all junk. And the crankshaft is 10 under on the mains, 20 under on the throws. All new bearings in it. We'll see what's in the oil pump when I open that up. They probably redid it too. Quite strange. Now I'm going to pull the transmission off. But before I do that, we have to drain the belly. So there's 3 plugs in this. 2 of them are these large ones that take a 1 1/16 socket. There's one in the bottom of the transmission and one in the hydraulic pump. And the third one is this little pipe plug under the back of the differential. So you want to make sure you've got some good sized drain buckets, because there's 5 gallons of lube in this thing from one end to the other. Then all we got to do now is take off the clutch rod and we can pull the transmission off. I decided before I take the transmission off, I'm going to go ahead and take the back wheels off and get the thing on stands, because the shorter it gets, the wobblier it gets. And battling with the back wheels on these things, if they've been sitting, this side I had to get the porta power out to pop it free. This one came off, and the balance is funny because that one only had air in it and this one was full of calcium. But anyway, we got it off without killing anybody, so we'll now we can go ahead and pull the transmission off. Well, we got the transmission off, and I'm pretty happy what I see inside. This thing is nice and clean. I think this was probably a pretty nice little tractor at one point. I don't know what happened to the engine, why the cylinder head was off. It's possible that maybe it's set for a while and a valve stuck and they were trying to free it up. I don't know why. There's no reason for what I see. The engine is like literally freshly overhauled. But anyway, it doesn't matter now. She's coming apart for parts. So starting to get some of the components of the hydraulic lift taken apart. On this side, the lift arm, I was able to get it off, just knocked it off with a mallet. The other side, not so lucky. I banged on it there. I even put a lot of heat on it, but it just took the whole rock shaft and the bushing rate up. But that's okay. We'll take it over to the hydraulic press and push the rock shaft out of it once it cools off. Also took a little bit of heat to get the yoke off the draft control plunger, but that's off now. Now we'll go ahead and we'll take the quadrant lever and everything off. That'll probably require some more heat. Got her down to the nitty gritties now. What's left to do is get the axle tubes off, get the differential out, and the hydraulic pump, and then that'll be it. When you take the axle tubes off, this one comes off no problem. The one on the other side, when you take it off, the differential carrier falls out. It's sandwiched in between these two axle tubes. So just keep that in mind, that there's a very, very large piece of metal that's going to come out of there when you pull that far axle tube off. Anyway, we're going to start by pulling this one off. I've got just one nut left holding it on. Okay, so we've got this axle housing or tube or trumpet, a lot of people call it, off, and I'll show you a couple of things. If you ever have one of these off, good idea to take this cotter pin out and get a big impact gun and give a couple of ugga-duggas on that nut there, because that's what holds the pin for the lower lift arm. And over time, even though it's in on a taper, the odd time one of them comes loose and it'll start leaking oil out around there and it'll drive you nuts, and there's really no way to stop that oil leak without taking the thing apart. This is a 2N, 9Ns are the same, and gray Fergusons are also the same. Another thing we're going to do, if you're in there and you pull the axles out to put a set of Sure Seals in to stop your brakes getting covered in oil, it's also a good idea to take the axle tubes off and get rid of this dam. Because what this dam does is it traps gear lube in the axle tube to lubricate the wheel bearing. Which, once you have Sure Seals in it, the wheel bearing is lubricated by grease, and we don't want anything at all that will promote any oil going through that bearing and coming out onto your brakes. So that's a good idea. You can drill it out, grind it out, bust it out, blow it out with a torch. Just get that dam out of there. There's the differential out. It's got a 12-inch ring gear, pretty stout. One thing that does cause problems occasionally, you'll notice that the ring gear is riveted to the carrier, not bolted. And there have been cases of the rivets loosening up or coming out and you lose the drive. I don't know what's the root cause of that, if it was ones that were put together wrong, or if the rivets were inferior material, or if it was repeated shock loads, or if the tractor had just worked really hard its whole life. I have no idea. I'm not sure how they would have fixed it in the old days. You probably would have had to buy a whole new carrier, or maybe they would recommend that you bolt it back together if there's room for the nuts and bolts. In the modern world, it's just as easy to find a wreck like this and grab the differential and the pinion out of it. Well, that's all that's left. We got her down to the bare center housing. I'll stash that away up in the barn while we work on these other ones, just in case I find a cracked one or something. It's always good to have one of these things around. Despite the bulk of them, they actually break pretty easily. A lot of people have broken them. So anyway, we're well on the road, I guess, on our little 9N. We've gotten a lot of the parts we need from this old 2N, and I'll order the few little bits and pieces I need now to put it the rest of the way together, and we can get working on it. So hopefully in the next video we'll have it back in here and start tearing into it. Anyway, until then, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Claremont Classic Garage. So long.